So the last session ended with reference to nature-based work in healthcare systems and how it was not embedded in the organizational culture, which meant that nature-based work wasn't available to everybody. And that nature connection can help in the healing from trauma. And however, paradoxically, to be truly in connection with nature also means to be in connection with the loss of nature and to open to feelings of pain and grief at the harm that humans are causing. And this brings us to the next contribution, Undist Forest cover by the artist Hanna Tuulikki. And this is part of our collaboration with the Scottish Contemporary Art Network. And in this piece, Hanna explores the experience of being lost in an enchanted forest landscape as a metaphor for the anxiety, grief, and trauma that comes with ecological awareness. And for me, this brings to mind Aldo Leopold's words from 1949 in A Sand County Almanac. One of the penalties of an ecological education is that one lives alone in a world of wounds. And often in the West, the pain that we feel is a private, solitary experience and not processed collectively because we do not have, or we've discarded or forgotten social norms around that. So I now invite Hanna to introduce her artwork.
Thanks, Nadine, and thank you for having me here today, and thanks to all the speakers. I feel so kind of overwhelmed by how much I'm learning today and how generous everybody is being. So I thought I'd give a little bit of context to this work. The film that I'm sharing, Under Forest Cover, or in Finnish, Metsän peiton alla, was presented earlier this year as part of an installation within an underground bunker on an island in Helsinki's archipelago. And it's an ex-military island that's being rewilded. So it's a very interesting context. And inside this bunker, I constructed a grove of about 30 birch trees, and there was floor bark cover, which created the scent of the forest in this underground space. And the moving image was projected onto a see-through screen in this forest grove. So the body that features in the film, which a link will be posted shortly in the chat, it floats in the space like a hologram or a kind of spectral presence. And for this online version, it's just the film element that you'll see and the sound, which was in surround for the installation pressed into stereo. And so in this work, as Nadine explained, I was exploring a Finnish folkloric concept called metsänpeitto, which means forest cover. And it was traditionally used to describe when someone went missing in the forest. So to be caught in metsänpeitto means to be lost in an enchanted forest landscape where you begin to hear strange sounds, places become unfamiliar, everything begins to move in reverse, time reverses, and a person who is lost in forest cover becomes indistinguishable from a rock or a tree stump. And I started to understand these aspects as experiences of trauma. Oh, I think somebody's got their mic on. So the dissociation that's been coming up a lot in these sharings today, the shifts in sensory awareness, and the change in perception of time, the kind of warping of time. And I began to consider metsänpeitto, forest cover, as a metaphor for the anxiety and grief that comes with ecological awareness, relating this to my own experiences of eco-anxiety and grief. And within the folklore, there are a series of actions said to help the one lost in forest cover find their way out, like looking under the left arm, looking between the legs, beating or touching the ground. And the ones who are on the outside can also call into the forest to try to release the one who is caught. So at the heart of my inquiry, I was thinking, what might this folklore teach us about how we might meet and begin to process or transform or stay with the feelings that come with ecological catastrophe? So I devised a choreography of held poses which reference these folkloric gestures, helping the one caught in forest cover find their way. And I began to learn how to perform them backwards, holding each one for a minute or so, which was quite challenging. And it felt like there was an equivalence to staying with these difficult feelings. And then the choreography was reversed in the film edit. And the film kind of glitches between searching disembodied or fragmented limbs, another word that seems to be coming up a lot today, this fragmentation, and then full human form. And it slows down and it speeds back up. And then it culminates in a backward song of sorrow that's inspired by another Finnish forest-related tradition of singing your troubles to the trees. So in this Finnish Karelian Ingrian tradition, people would go to the forest and tell or sing their sorrows to the birch, to the spruce, to the willow. And it was thought that the forest would listen without judgment, never betraying the singer. And then the sound also features a searching voice, which is based on a vocal improvisation that I recorded on what used to be my family's now derelict farm in the northeast of Finland. And the calls are made up of these kind of quite bird-like wordless sounds and lyrics that translate as come back, come back, come back home. Tuku, 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 tänne, 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 pois, tänne. And I worked with these to animate the echo of the surrounding forest plantation and to interact musically with the various bird life, the wind in the trees, calling into a kind of relationship or kinship with these different communities, becoming with the forest. But I was also feeling like I was connecting to my ancestors. So there's this sense of the past, present, and future coming together, at least in my experience of making. My ancestors were displaced by the industrialization of farming, so I was really connecting with their history. And then I worked with this recording, interlocking with the image. So there's this disembodied voice and fragmented body that meet each other in the space. And then as well as the installation, I also made a live performance that was kind of a companion piece to the installation, where my collaborator, Peter McMaster, guided the audience on a walk through the woodland, the rewilded woodland on this island, in a kind of journey into and out of forest cover, into and out of metsäpeitto. And they followed the sound of my voice. They couldn't see me. They followed the sound of my voice, animating the woodland through echoes of these herding songs, through bird vocalizations. I was interacting a lot with the nightingales who were very present during that time in May and June. And also the backward song of sorrows to the trees. And Peter invited the audience to action these gestures, these folkloric gestures, said to help the one lost in forest cover find their way. So looking under the left arm and between the legs. And in doing so, there was a kind of a gentle invitation to the audience to shift perspective. So to look at the world, the more than human world differently, to touch the ground, to smell the ground, to see upside down. I mean, it's kind of, have you looked through your legs very often? It really shifts everything in the body. You become close to the earth, you can smell the earth, you hear the insects in the plants growing next to you. So it's really using the body to direct attention, direct senses to earth others. And there's a Finnish saying, beautiful Finnish saying, the forest will answer in the way that you call to it. It's a lesson of cause and effect. It's kind of like, it's known as Finnish karma, right? It teaches that the things we do have consequences. Echoes bounce back. What goes around comes around. And in the Finnish folklore, the way out of metsampeito is not through thinking. It's not through fixing things, as was discussed in the last session, but through feeling with the body, through shifting perspective, through staying with the trouble. Steffi asked the question earlier, how do we learn to listen? And I like to say, perhaps if we listen carefully, we can hear the echo through the trees.
Okay, I think that should more or less be enough time for people to have seen Hanna's film there. And each time I watch it, I get something a bit different from it. There's so many layers of meaning there, particularly having heard Hanna's explanation and read about her, you know, what's all kind of gone, her thinking that's gone into this piece. And for me, one of the big questions which comes up is what happens when you come out of the forest? Who are you? And this idea that's been talked about before about the suffering in the forest is this process of transformation. So you'll probably have also thought about all kinds of other connections with the previous speakers, and Hanna pulled some of them out already. And what I'm going to do now is invite Margaret and Malika to come with Hanna and hand over to you for an emergent conversation of the themes in the film and bringing in your own work and experience and practice in these areas of nature connection and ecotherapy. And so over to you.
Margaret, you have your sound unmuted. Do you want to start? Oh, I feel like so. I feel transported in a different place in a different time. Probably. It's difficult to
I'll have a go. Yeah, I'll have a go. Yeah, I think just having listened and watched a few times, each time the experience sort of sinks in more deeply into me, and it reminds me of learning a song by singing it again and again on my own or with others, of how it somehow seems to seep into the fabric of my body, that it's not necessarily only a mental, a thinking process or a vocal process, but a whole body process. And I don't know if this is true, but somebody once said that snails hear with their whole body. And I feel like the more I listen to it and the more I watch, the more I hear it with my body. And this time, listening to Hanna's description of the parallel experience of being conducted through embodying some of the postures, I was doing that myself while I was watching the film, and that really changed things in a way that is very hard to articulate verbally. So one of the things which is a particular has been a focus of mine for a long time, is really different ways of knowing, and embodied knowledge as a way of knowing, music as a way of knowing, song as a way, but not just a way of knowing, as a way of listening as well, a kind of call and response. And I was thinking about the Gaelic Psalms, you know, the tradition. When I listen to the Gaelic Psalms, it sounds like the sea and the choir, the congregation are singing back and forward between each other, and there's a presenter there, but it doesn't feel like it's only a response to him, and it usually is a hymn. It feels like a response to the whole. There's something about the spaciousness of the sound that feels like a response to the whole atmosphere and place that these songs come from. So I was feeling that kind of spaciousness. In the darkness of the video, I was feeling a longing for what was probably there that I couldn't see with my eyes. It reminded me of being out at night, of practicing in the dark, of only being able to see a little way. It made me think of my mum, who's losing her eyesight and who can't really see so far now, but for her the soundscape has expanded enormously. And I'm thinking of all these ways that we try and, you know, or not just try and, but we naturally are orientated towards staying connected through our senses, and maybe even as our senses are not available to us through other senses that are very subtle, our five senses, there might be other senses there that we feel deep inside our bodies where we can pick up maybe an echo of what it is we might be able to do to help. And I know that happens in therapy, working with individuals, and my work outdoors for my doctoral research is about that sort of echoing back from the places I'm in. What is it? How can I really listen to this place? And how can that be transformed through me into some usually visual art practice, but sometimes song, sometimes movement as well. And I was thinking of this as I was thinking of the kind of sense of dismemberment that at the beginning of the video that gradually becomes more and more together. I was thinking about until Hanna's form starts to appear more fully towards the end, with a different kind of cadence of the song towards the end as well, a different connected and this different feeling of connectedness, and about singing ourselves back home, about remembering ourselves through song and body. And, you know, going back to the first, you know, some of the early presentations today about how do we listen, how do we hear different things, how do we respond in ways that are not just the old ways, or maybe they are very, very old ways that have actually been forgotten. How do we remember those very old ways of listening and responding, and how can that help us to take more skillful action now, and to express what's in our hearts when we really open up to the pain of what's going on, but also the joy and beauty of what's there, and stay with it, what emerges from that in terms of what we can do. So I think that's the end of my response just now.
Thank you, Margaret. Oof, I feel, I feel it was so important, Anna, that you brought us back to the body. And I feel I deliberately didn't prepare for this session because I wanted what I said to come from the body. I think it was the same for you, Margaret. And I think from a lot from what we've heard today is what happened when we are disembodied, all the dissociations we have. And for me, I've worked for 15 years as an ecologist, as a forester, and yet it is within the art that I find, or within art therapy, healing arts, that I find that there has been the most embodiment. So this is a place that I have returned to a lot. And I noticed when I watch your piece, when I experience your piece, there's a lot of things going on in me. Yeah, it's and a strong feeling that I had that came with me in when you were embodying is that I didn't know if you were a bird or a different creature. So that sensation of interbeing really came strongly to me. And interbeing was coined by Thich Nhat Hanh, you know, to say how, you know, like that we can feel not only ourselves, but those different bodies earlier that you mentioned, Anna, you know, the earth body, the social body, the soil body. The more conscious we become, the more then we are listening, because, you know, like then we can have this echo. I'm trying to see some threads today in the conversation. Maybe I will start. So I will start with my own story. Right now, I'm in Brandenburg in Germany. I moved to Germany a few years. And one of the, well, I love the forest. And when I landed in the forest here, I really sensed death in this place. Like that lots of people had died here. I really felt it. And then the neighborhood told me this was the last resistance of the Nazis here. And I'm here every weekend. I'm wandering a lot in the forest, and through feeling the spirits of this place, I am able to understand Germany in a way that I wouldn't have been able to. You know, I would have just seen them as a perpetrator. And through wandering through the forest and feeling the spirits that live here, for me, something was reconciled, not reconciled, but I was able to go to a different place, to go into a place of interbeing, you know, that I, you know, like, and I had one of the stories that I wanted to bring out today as well is I started to feel that very much in the climate movement. It was no longer the us, you know, versus them. When I started to work with youth activists, with artists, therapists as part of the as part of the climate movement, I really now have the sense that this is our initiation, our collective initiation, because otherwise it would have been, you know, you the global south, you there, you know, like we would still have this story of separation. And through the climate movement, I you know, like it brought me back to those different bodies. And I think this is where I kind of stopped today. It's been a planetary initiation being with all of you today as part of this, as part of working on climate change. Thank you.
It's really interesting, Margaret, to hear you talk about the Gaelic psalm singing and the connection to the sea, the movement of the sea. Just to step out of the forest to the shoreline for a moment. I think that there's been this, I can't remember if it was in the speaker session or if it's in the panels. Everything seems to be mushing together in my brain, but there was a lot of talk about learning from Indigenous knowledges, and we can expand this maybe to think about vernacular folk knowledges more broadly. Vernacular knowledges that exist in our own back door. What might these embodied knowledges teach us about processes of unbecoming as much as becoming, and of coexistence and kinship? And those Gaelic psalms, they're so mimetic of the sea. It's almost like it's through a process of felt connection and listening to the sea that's then conjured through the body, and there's a dissolving of these boundaries, that our boundaries have become permeable. They are permeable. During COP, I started to explore these seal calling songs. They're really amazing. Have you ever sung? Has anyone ever sung to seals? To a water where seals are? Seals come. And during COP, a good friend of mine and I decided that, okay, we're going to lead a lament based on these seal calling songs. And it was very spontaneous. It makes me feel quite emotional thinking about it, actually. We met and about 20 people came to sing. We taught these seal calling songs and then led an improvisation by the River Clyde. And these seal calling songs, they imitate the seals. And we were singing and singing and singing. And then a grey seal appeared in the River Clyde. And it was incredible. And there was a felt connection, and it was through it just felt like the grief and the hope came together, and it was transformative for everybody there, and it was about community and this container for these emotions that we've been feeling, and that is through ancient knowledge. Anyway, I feel like I could ramble on about these things, but yeah, there's knowledge there. We just have to listen, huh?
I think whenever I've been out and I've been working outdoors and sort of giving forward whatever call it is, whether it's just a willingness to be there and listen, or a song, or a movement, or a drawing, or making something, I just am so amazed and encouraged by the amount of time that there's a response, whether it's an animal coming or a feeling or just finding something. And I think sometimes I can get a bit stuck in feelings of guilt or shame about all the trouble that my own species has caused. But when that hand, in whatever form the hand is reached back towards me, and there's a friendliness there, a friendship of a seal actually wanting to come and go, yeah, hello, or a gift from a place, or a feeling of the ancestors, or some other happening, I just feel that's a connection that can bring some solidarity and help that we're actually able to work on this together. I don't mean just as humans, but that there's something there where we're not being shut out, where we can connect. And I think that chimes with what you're saying, Malika, about the forest and, you know, the possibility for a third space, a kind of space where we can come together, even though there has been damage that we've caused, either to other humans or you know, non-human, whatever it is, that there's a possibility of understanding and forgiveness. Is frees me up, that thought.
Yeah, it reminds me of a vision that my husband had, that you know, Hanna, how you were saying that all of the knowledge is there, and then Margaret, how you saying that, you know, like what we're looking for is this forgiveness. And you know, he said that he felt like all this knowledge are stored in the trees, and we just need to touch them and feel them and listening, and that knowledge will, you know, like move back to us. And somehow I feel that already in that space that you allowed with that piece, Anna, I already feel the field is different right now. There is a stillness. There is something new that you just introduced to this group right now. Thank you.
I feel like if we were in a room together physically, maybe now would be a good time to sing together. I feel like we've gone on a journey today through so many different perspectives that we've been sharing, and to be in a space together. Would you like to hear a bit of a seal calling song? And then maybe if you are near a body of water where seals live, after this, you could go outside and sing, or not, or you don't have to, or a cow calling song. Seals or cows?
You know, I was going to ask you whether you could sing for us. I'm so longing for it. I can see it in Margaret's eyes.
My friend has just texted, seals? I think they are here. Okay, so this works. If you go and sing. That's how it goes. That's my gift to you today.
I was thinking just something there about in Tibetan Buddhism, my experience of that practice, about the mantra, and repeating a mantra, singing a mantra for a long time, and then the kind of the idea of when the mantra stops, the silence when the mantra stops, it feels like something where things can emerge and we can see clearly and feel more clearly, and And I was just wondering about that for, outdoor practice of the repeated calling, and then, what maybe when it stops, if it can help us hear in that silence.
I'm also noticing as I work more on climate change and as work more on the body, how I welcome silence. I used to be so uncomfortable with silence, and now we have, hundreds of people around us listening to our silence, and how I've come to welcome and be comfortable with silence. And yes, when I think of that call that you did, calling the seal, I think it's in the silence that we will see the seal. If we miss the silences, this is when we miss the seeing, because actually nature is always showing us things, but we just don't see and listen. And it's in those moments that we are silent that we are able to see.
That was such a beautiful conversation between the three of you there. And I've really enjoyed how it flowed between you and the rhythm of the silences. So yeah, thank you for bringing that to the summit. And it's a really wonderful and kind of provocative as well way to end the contributions from the speakers. So what a deeply enriching and stimulating journey we've been on today. There's been so much to wonder about, and so many threads of connection between all the different elements. Okay.